Today we'll breathe some life into our 502 Big Block here on Horsepower TV, so don't you go away.
Today on Horsepower TV, more Project Blue Thunder with a new rear end for our 71 Chevelle, along with suspension pieces and a new fuel system. We'll go to the track to show you how to run with the top guns on a paltry budget. And we'll help you get ahead of the exhaust game with some header tech. So hang on for Horsepower TV.
It's 23 feet long, built for speed, and the fastest small block Chevy on the planet. Hi everybody, welcome to the Horsepower Shop. This is the famous Vesco family Streamliner built back in 1957, now making its run at the records at the hands of Niche Motorsports out of Salt Lake City. Oh, and speaking of records, it holds 12 in various classes, and check this out. Each and every one of them was set with fuel-injected small block Chevys. Now, the most recent record was over 344 miles an hour at Bonneville running methanol.
Now that's what I'd call a real alky hauler. Of course, not all Chevrolets are fuel-injected small blocks, nor are they built to run on the salt flats. For instance, this 70 Camaro has a 454 big block and a trio of traditional Holley carburetors, and well, you can bet it sees its fair share of street action. Now, our latest street fighter is this 71 Chevelle here, and we call it Project Blue Thunder. You're going to find out why later on in the show. Now, we rescued this thing from a junkyard and turned it into a jewel with a fresh coat of paint. Then we built a GM Performance Parts 502 horse 502, topped it with an Accel Super Ram fuel injection. Then we bolted up a B&M Turbo 400 trans.
Well, today you're going to hear old Blue Thunder roar. That is after we install this 9-inch rear end and keep it in place with a new high-performance suspension setup.
That's great. We're also going to add this new fuel tank, plumb the fuel system, and finally finish up the wiring and put some fire in the hull. Now, I got to tell you, man, I can't wait to hear that big block come to life.
Well, let's spin some wrenches. Now, we disconnected our brake lines, control arms, and shocks, so this old rear end's about ready to come out. Now, before you crawl under your vehicle, make sure you support it with jack stands first.
Man, this transmission jack is sure going to make life easier. Hey, Joe, give me a hand steadying this.
You bet.
All right. Now, we could have used this old rear end here, but quite honestly, we don't know what kind of shape it's in. Here, let's swing it around like that. Now, what we do know, though, is we got over 500 horsepower we got to put through this thing. We're going to need a solid rear end. All right, swing it a little more. A little more.
What we got here is a 9-inch Ford rear end modified by Curry Enterprises to fit our Chevelle. Now, we ordered ours with a 350 gear and their torque-sensing limited slip differential. Ought to give us solid traction and good performance on the street or strip.
You bet it will. Now, to make it all work in the Chevelle, Curry's gone ahead and stamped up all these new brackets, located them on the rear end housing, then welded them in place. The axles are heavy-duty 31 spline pieces that have been re-drilled for that Chevy 4 3/4 bolt pattern.
Now, here's something to give extra peace of mind. The stock Chevelle rear end came with these puny 9.5-inch drums. Our Curry comes with these massive 11-inchers. Now, that ought to be enough to stop old Blue Thunder once she gets rolling.
To keep our rear end solidly in place beneath our car, we're going to replace these stock stamp control arms with these trick pieces from Hotchkiss. Now, they're fully welded tubular steel construction, and they've got greasable urethane bushings. Now, on the upper control arms, they're even adjustable, so you can optimize your pinion angle for maximum traction. The whole thing comes as a kit and includes new springs, rear sway bar, and these diagonal braces.
Now, with the upper and lower control arms in place, we're now installing these diagonal chassis braces. Now, they bolt up, well, just like this one, to strengthen the chassis and eliminate flex.
The sway bar attaches to the lower control arm, just like the stock one does, and well, now we're ready for the spring. It sits on top of the axle housing just like that.
Of course, the shocks come next, and we decided to go with these Monroe Sensitrax. They're gas shocks with valving that automatically adjust to different driving conditions. And after Chuck installs these, we can bend some lines for brakes. There you go.
Hey man, speaking of brakes, don't you think we're about ready for one?
Okay, but you stay right there. We'll come storming back with more Blue Thunder right after this.
Just ahead, headers and how you can choose the right pair for your ride. Plus later, don't let your drag racing dreams go up in smoke. We'll show you a low-budget road to lower ETs.
Hey, welcome back to the Horsepower Shop and to more of Project Blue Thunder. Well, now that we have our 9-inch rear end installed, we can tackle another important task, and that's measuring for the drive shaft. Looks like Chuck's got a head start. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, pretty good. Now, I called our buddy Carl over at the Driveline shop in Springfield, Missouri. You remember him, don't you?
Oh, yeah, he helped us with our Camaro last year.
Right. Well, here's what he said to get the right measurements for a drive shaft. You start here at the back of the tail shaft housing, and you measure to the center line of the trunnion on the rear pinion.
Looks like 58 inches.
Then measure the U-joint width between these two locating tabs. Looks like about 3.6 to me. And finally, we measure the cup size of the U-joint. Looks like about 1.1 inches to me.
All right, I got it. That's it?
That's it. Let me have those dimensions. I'll give them to Carl. We ought to have our drive shaft in about a week.
Good deal.
All right.
All fuel injection systems, including our Super Ram setup, have two requirements. First of all, the fuel has to be clean so the injectors can do their job, and it's a high-pressure system, so we need a pump that's going to provide the pressure and fuel quantity we need. Of course, any fuel system begins with a tank, and well, that's the first thing we're going to replace.
We'll replace that old tank with his new one from Original Parts Group. Now, it's an inexpensive way to keep the rust, crud, and corrosion out of your fuel system and from clogging up your injectors. Now, we're also going to go ahead and install a new fuel pickup and sending unit. Just drops in the hole, something like that. Also got real lucky. The new tank has this built-in vent that we're going to use for our fuel return line.
Now, once that tank gets installed, we're going to plumb it with these new lines we got from Russell Performance. We'll use the steel braided line here from the tank to the fuel pump, and hard lines like this from the pump into the engine compartment. By the way, the pump we're using comes with the Super Ram kit. It cranks out 70 gallons an hour at 40 psi. Well, looks like I got here just in time because you're about done.
As usual, Elmore, your timing is impeccable, but guess what?
What?
There's still plenty of work to be done, and guess who's going to get their hands dirty for a change?
Okay, I get the picture. Well, actually, our next job is to find a suitable place to mount this fuel pump. We want it close to the gas tank because it pushes fuel better than it pulls it. Of course, we want to avoid any interference with suspension or other moving parts or hot exhaust. I'll tell you what, this would be a good spot right here. Now, if we just bend this flange back 90 degrees, we'll be in business.
Of course, a good inline filter will complete our plumbing job, and we're mounting this one downstream from the pump. Now, I've gone ahead and fabbed up this little bracket. Once we get it attached to the frame, we can go ahead and run our hard line up into the engine compartment.
There, that'll do it. Now, the work we've done so far today ought to take you and a buddy the better part of a weekend to complete, and well, money-wise, the fuel lines and tanks set us back about $300. Suspension components another $700, and our rear end, well, about $1,800. Now, before we get this thing on the ground, I'm going to fill this thing up with some of this synthetic gear lube.
And I'm going to bolt up our CSI gear reduction starter, the B&M trans cooler, and hook up our O2 sensor.
Now, I know we promised you'd get to hear Blue Thunder rumble today, but before we can turn the key, we got to finish hooking up the fuel injection system, starting with the wiring. This job also includes the fuel injectors, water temperature sensor, our map sensor, and a low-car TPI throttle cable.
We're going to light this monster off with an MSD ignition and mount the 6AL box away from heat and vibration. right up here on the fender well. Now, you may remember we had this custom quick disconnect harness made by M&H Electrical Fabricators, and it plugs into the box just like that.
Next, we can add all the vital fluids to the engine and trans, hook up all the hoses, and fill the radiator with coolant.
All right, well, that's about it. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to hear this rat rumble.
Sounds pretty good for now. Well, once we get our drive shaft back and put some break-in miles on this thing, we'll bring it in for a test on our chassis dyno in a few weeks. Hey, but stay with us. More Horsepower TV is ahead.
Just ahead, hitting high quarter-mile speeds on a low budget. We come back.
All right, welcome back. You know, it takes more than fast cash to run a 7-second Pro Street car like this one, but there is a way to get low ETs on a low budget in a class that has its roots on the back streets of the 50s.
Welcome to Easy Street. It's one of today's fast-growing entry-level heads-up drag racing classes with rules that keep the cost low while the thrill level stays high. In this NMCA class, tires are 11.5-inch DOTs, engines run on a single 4-barrel with only one stage of nitrous. There's no fuel injection, no Lincos, nothing but good old cheap thrills.
Yeah, I like the aspect of stock suspension with the DOT tires. And that's a car. I mean, you know, it's a street car. I can take it out and go to the grocery store if I want with it.
It's a good class. Everybody's friendly. You come out and have a good time. If you win some races, you can, have a good time, make some money.
Gary Rose won scores of Easy Street races, cash prizes, and championships in his 1980 Mustang that was only recently raced on the Strip.
I bought it in April of 1990, drove it to high school, college, work, here and there, everywhere, street raced it, and all, everything.
Of course, when it was time to get serious about racing, Easy Street was the route to take to go fast without going to the poorhouse.
358 cubic inch Ford. It's got a flat tappet camshaft, cast iron dart heads, BG 950 carburetor, stock block, stock crank. It ain't nothing special, nothing fancy, just parts that work.
Easy Street works for Bob Josie, who often runs in the low 9s in his 71 Camaro. Bob saves a ton of money on tech support because his whole tech crew is his dad.
With nitrous, you can hurt the motor real easy, and I've hurt a lot of them, but it's sort of my job to keep this thing going, so we're there for the final round.
Bill's retired from his own weekend racing, but gets plenty of thrills guiding his son to the finish line. That is, when the driver pays attention.
You know how fathers and sons are. The son never listens to the dad, so... No, we disagree on a few little things, but we usually come around together. What I enjoy is seeing a good number on that scoreboard and seeing a win light. That's what I enjoy.
Well, here's the inside story on how Bob and his small block Camaro nailed one of those low 9 ETs.
And I just come up into the burnout box, and my dad rolls me through the water and pulls me out of the water a little bit, and I'm in first gear. And then when they tell me to spin, I wrap the throttle and I get it up about 5 grand into first, and I hit second gear and mat it and bring it back, and I hold it at about 65, 7 grand, and I come flying by my dad past the lights, just smoking the tires big time. When I stage my 2 lights, and he's got his 2 lights staged, I press this button and mat it. When I see a flicker of yellow, I lift, and this car will explode, man, just violently. And I instantly, when this shift light comes on, I hit second gear. Going down track, I hit third gear, put my hand on the wheel, go across the line, I shut my nitrous off, turn my fan on, leave it in third, start slowing down. Hopefully, I'll be pulling this lever right here. And that's for the parachute. That'll mean I'll be going real fast.
And having a real blast doing it. Classes like Easy Street are an easy way into heads-up racing, whether it's a stepping stone to faster classes
or a final destination? Low buck, high horsepower excitement.
I really like to run Super Street, but it's getting out of hand, and I mean, you got to have a big budget to do it, and I don't have it. I'm pretty happy where I'm at.
Next, a brief but exhaustive look at headers when Horsepower TV returns.
Hi, welcome back. Headers have a positive effect on horsepower, torque, and fuel economy, whether you're driving a race car, street rod, or even a tow vehicle. Well, today, to show you some of the differences, we brought in an assortment of headers from Hedman.
That's right. We've got everything from these top fuel flamethrowers to street rod block huggers. Now, the top fuel header here is pretty straightforward. As you can see, the primaries are huge and relatively short in length. And at the risk of oversimplification, their main job really is to just get the exhaust away from the engine and into the atmosphere.
Well, next we have a Pro Stock header. Now, the configuration is fairly critical on a normally aspirated engine, so while the primary tubes are large, over 2 inches, they're all of equal length. Now, the length and diameter of the primaries and even collector affect power and torque peaks.
Now, generally, large diameter and relatively short primary tubes and collectors are going to enhance upper RPM horsepower, and, well, that's the kind of header that you're going to find on a race car.
That you will. Now, I've noticed, and perhaps you guys have too, that the longer, smaller diameter tubes are usually found in street applications. And the reason is they move the horsepower peak down the scale, which is where you want it out there.
Now, be sure to match your header design to your engine size and application. Of course, clearance problems can also be a factor when you're designing headers, and Hedman's come up with a couple of solutions. They're shorty headers and they're block huggers. Now, check out the way the primary tubes come together on this one.
Of course, you can keep your headers looking good while making power thanks to metallic ceramic coatings from companies like Jet Hot. And if you don't like the chrome look here, well, you can get your coatings in color.
And as you can see, an expeditious exhaust is a whole lot more than just a pipe dream.
Well, we've about exhausted our puns for now at least, but stay with us. Hot Parts is next.
Now, Horsepower's Hot Parts, brought to you by Summit Racing Equipment, your source for high-performance parts for 30 years.
It's a simple equation. If you up the amount of air into your engine, you can bring down your ET. Well, here's a high-flow induction system for late model LT1s from Moroso that increases the airflow, adds about 20 horsepower, and can knock off 2/10 from your quarter-mile time. Now, it replaces the stock piece without any fabrication and features this extra-large air duct and a low-restriction filter that mounts outside the engine compartment for a cooler charge. And here's the coolest part about this bolt-on. At $220, well, that's only about $10 per extra pony.
Now, how about a look at a wide body? No, I'm not talking about mine. I'm talking about these rollers here. Now, they're wide body roller rockers from Crane, and they're designed for big block Chevys in extreme applications like drag racing or offshore competition. They're 50% stronger in the fulcrum area than Crane's standard gold rocker, and that mass is concentrated right there too, rather than on the nose or the pushrod seat area, to help minimize reciprocating weight. Of course, they'll take a little weight out of your wallet too. A set of these will set you back about $370.
Well, the makers of some new engine treatment claim you can add a couple of extra horsepower just by adding a bottle of this stuff to your street machine. If you do, you'll be in good company. Some of NASCAR's leading crew chiefs swear by it.
Yeah, it's called X1R, and it's designed to add engine life while reducing noise, wear, and even operating temperatures. Now, you just pour this stuff in next time you change oil, and the best part is it'll only cost you a little bit of pocket change, about $14.
Well, here's something that makes sense. Watching our show next week.
For years, Hemis have ruled the roads and strips. We'll build one of these high-powered Hemis, a 572 cubic inch monster that'll make over 900 horsepower. Plus, we'll take you to the track where everything that's old is new again in the fast, fun, and memorable world of nostalgia street racing.
This is the best class because we're nostalgic just like the cars.
In 2 weeks, we'll show you how to make nearly 20 extra horsepower in a stock 91 Firebird. It's a high-performance tune-up that includes a new manifold, ignition upgrade, underdrive pulleys, and a computer chip. We'll show you how to detail your trunk in no time flat and take you to a new hot rod hangout down in Orlando.
And remember, high-performance fun is what this show's all about.
Wait a minute. Remember our bet? You know, I bet you the hood wouldn't fit.
And you're gonna lose. You owe me a steak dinner.
Well, you put me a steak. I know why you got this hood made.
Why?
Because the stock hood doesn't fit.
We didn't say stock hood. We said the hood would clear. And look, here it is, man. It's gonna clear. Watch my paint now.
I'm watching your paint. It looks great. It's a beautiful hood, but it's not the hood.
This is the hood. As far as I'm concerned, it's the hood.
It's not the hood we bet on. You owe me a steak dinner. I want a nice big 20-ounce filet or T-bone. All the trimming.
Okay, I'll get you a filet.
Yeah?
Fish filet down here at the fish joint.
No, and you're not cooking steak either. I've had enough of your bologna steak for that.
Hey, wait a second now. There ain't nothing wrong with bologna steak.
Horsepower TV is an RTM production.